Dear Professor Willie Jennings, dear colleagues of the School of Religion and Theology, and especially the organizing team of this lecture, Hans and Fernando, colleagues of the Faculty of Social Sciences and Humanities, the rector of the Vrije Universiteit and Deputy Mayor Marlijn Moorman, and dear all of you gathered here tonight. To be honest, my first response to your words, Professor Jennings, would be silence. It would be to take a deep breath and to connect with my body to sense where and how your words, rooted in your personal spiritual biography, how your poetic voice touch my being here and now. And that is not just accidentally. Especially in turbulent times, finding your own voice becomes even more important. So, I hereby pick up the invitation to join the conversation with my own story and share where your words resonated. Well, they immediately took me back to about this day 5 years ago. At the time, I just moved from the historical city center of Amsterdam, a visible and physical reminder of our Dutch colonial past, to what is called the Bijlmer, Amsterdam Southeast, a district with 90,000 inhabitants of 130 different nationalities and about 150 different churches, where people have a lower income than the Amsterdam average, where there's a higher risk of becoming a victim of criminality. Children are advised lower levels for secondary education, and also a district with the lowest level of livability according to its inhabitants. Coming back to a question you asked us earlier today, it is here that I experience my own whiteness for the first time. It is the day of the second and biggest Black Lives Matter demonstration in Amsterdam, in the Nelson Mandela Park. I spontaneously decide to join the demonstration and find myself with my face mask on a white spot on the lawn. It's Corona times. Among over 2,000 other people. In hindsight, this demonstration marks a turning point in my personal life as a Christian and in my professional life as a minister and practical theologian. Two aspects of the why behind this epiphanic moment I want to focalize here tonight. First, at some point, one of the speakers of the demonstration quotes Martin Luther King Jr.'s "I Have a Dream," some phrases alluding to the prophecies of Jeremiah and Amos, connecting his hope for the emergence of the bright day of justice with the call to rise now from the dark and desolate valley of segregation to the sunlit of racial justice. And I remember, as if it was today, how these, for me as a Christian minister and theologian, familiar and meaningful words, and the hope they evoke, strike me like lightning. In the center of my being, of where I believe in and want to live and stand for. The second aspect of this epiphatic moment during the demonstration is when we are invited to look at the people next, in front, and behind us. To really look into each other's eyes. Although most of my face is covered, I know, I feel it in my body, that I am no longer an anonymous bystander who accidentally ended up here. By literally facing the other and by being seen, my aloneness, and I imagine the aloneness of 10,000 other people in a metropolitan park, is, well, why not call it redeemed? The 5 feet distance becomes a sacred space wherein we carefully approach each other. He, she, they, them matter to me, and I do matter for them. And no longer alone, but carefully connected without losing our unicity, here we stand together for peace and justice, the dignity for every human being. Martin Luther King's words, revived by the voice of a black man of my age and time, the invitation to look at the people next to us through, as I experience, God's eyes as bearers of God's image, set something in motion within me that I could no longer withhold. It motivated me to embark a personal pilgrimage along Catholic worker communities, intentional Christian communities, who show hospitality to undocumented people and strive for social justice, peace, and environmental change, inspired by Dorothy Day, Mahatma Gandhi, and Martin Luther King. In my practice as a minister and researcher, this epiphatic moment motivated me to implement practices and methodologies that support the involvement of all individuals and their unique experience and existence. This is how I encountered the work of Mickey Scott B. Jones, another generation member, a theologically trained womanist, author, and speaker, and associate fellow of racial justice with Evangelicals for Social Action. Her concept of creating a brave space together seems to me an example of how hope as a creative and receptive discipline can be lived, or maybe even better, can be practiced in our churches and communities and neighborhoods today. Let me conclude with what she envisions as a brave space. So, the words of Mickey Scott B. Jones. Together, we will create a brave space, because there's no such thing as a safe space. We exist in a real world. We all carry scars and we have all caused wounds in this space. We seek to turn down the volume of the outside world. We amplify voices that fight to be heard elsewhere. We call each other to more truth and love. We have the right to start somewhere and continue to grow. We have the responsibility to examine what we think we know. We will not be perfect. It will not always be what we wish it to be. But it will be our brave space together. And we will work side by side. Thank you.
Here we go. Thank you. Well done.
Dear amazing and wonderful people, good evening. Thank you, Prof. Janice. Your words moved soul and spirit. As a Black woman, as a Christian, as a wife, a mother, a daughter, a friend, a colleague, a sister, and more, I felt seen, stretched, and stirred. You reminded us that hope isn't feeling, but a discipline, something we do with our bodies, our prayers, our gardens, our grief, and our God. Thank you for naming our melancholy without romanticizing it, and for guiding us gently back to the ground, to creation, to community, to the God who sustains us in death and in music. I'm grateful. We are grateful. This morning, as my family was getting ready for our day, I paused and I said, today I'll be home a little later. I have a program tonight. It's about hope. My son said, hope seems fun. Mama, I smiled, because I usually work on themes of slavery, colonialism, racism. Not so fun at all. And in between breakfast and packing lunches, I turned to my children and I asked, what is hope? My 9-year-old son said, hope is believing that things will get better. So I asked him, what does it mean to believe it will get better? And with clarity, he said, read the Bible, pray, encourage yourself, encourage others, but take action too. That but stopped me, because he guessed it already. Then, my 7-year-old daughter said, hope is something that is not yet there, but you know it will come. And I asked her, how do you know it will come? And she smiled like it was so obvious, and I was clueless. Because God got you, and he will give you strength, she said. Then I turned to my 5-year-old son. He didn't say anything. He just smiled. That deep soul smile, a kind of knowing that I can't really put to words. My husband stood there, listening. He didn't interrupt. He just looked at me, and then at them, and nodded. That quiet nod said a lot, because as a Black migrant man living in the Netherlands, he too carries the weight of raising Black children in a world that cannot always hold their light. Because in our home, hope is something we teach, we learn, we grow, but also something we have to negotiate daily. A survival, like Prof. Janice says. Prof puts it beautifully, it is a practice. And yet I have to ask, what happens when the discipline of hope becomes another burden? When hope becomes a mask we wear to keep us from screaming and from crying and from shouting? Prof. Jennings does not offer us comfort, not at all. He offers us confrontation, and I receive it. But I also want to wrestle with it. Prof. Jennings speaks of hope as disciplined movement through melancholic terrain, a life that refuses to be still in despair, even when despair seems all-encompassing. That language, melancholy, movement, ground, made me rethink. Here in the Netherlands, most of that opposition is often quiet, evasive, and cloaked in civility. It takes the form of strategic forgetting, colonialism as curriculum footnotes, slavery as that complex past, Zwarte Piet as an innocent cultural practice, missionary Christianity, well, I don't want to go into that. To bring up race, empire, and trauma, it seems like an imported American problem. And the memory lives on, not in archives, but in our bodies, in wounds, in the bodies of our children. What does a blues tradition look like when your history has been muted and when you are told to be grateful you are allowed to be here? When you are tolerated and not listened to? And when you bring your sorrow or your anger, it is often pathologized, stereotyped, and you are given names. Angry black woman. Can we imagine justice beyond apologies and symbolic gestures? So I appreciate your warning, Prof. You spoke of black hands in the garden. But here, and when I say here, I mean here, it's not everyone's ground. For some, there is no place to plant. There is no land, there is no stable home. For some, the image of the field recalls not freedom, not touching the deck to enjoy, but plantations, not peace, but forced labor. Still, we try. We buy store soil and try to grow tomatoes on balconies. We sow peppers in concrete, in corners. And it's not just gardening, it's protest. It's joy, it's resistance. What must be unlearned about God, about ourselves, and about our society so we can also plant and have hope and thrive. And I still wrestle because this kind of hope is exhausting. What happens when we are celebrated? That is if we will ever be celebrated. That is if we are really celebrated at all. For what we have shaped out of suffering, but never giving space to rest from work of shaping. We keep shaping. So I wonder, can there be a hope that holds so much exhaustion? Can it make space not only for the habit of surviving, but for the desire not to have to survive so creatively, so constantly, all the time? Is it possible not to turn pain into purpose, that we forget the right to simply say, this hurts, I'm tired, I'm in pain, this is too much, this should not be, I need rest, I want rest, I deserve rest. As you note, Prof, creativity can collapse into addiction and becomes a way out, not a way forward. But we hold on to hope, not because we are naive, like you rightly put it, but because we are rooted in God of the Exodus, rooted in the God who says, even now, behold, I am doing a new thing. Because if this hope is not big enough to hold our griefs and our glories, then it is not hope. It is denial, like you put it. This hope is big enough for our differences, big enough for our doubts, big enough for justice, big enough for us, big enough for our children, big enough for us all, because it is rooted in God. Thank you.